This month, Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 were re-released in cinemas as a single 4.5-hour film called The Whole Bloody Affair. This video is about what makes it different, and just like that movie, and I promise this wasn't planned, this episode ended up getting much bigger than intended, and the making of it delayed its full release. And fittingly and ironically, it grew so much that it could be cut down into 2 separate volumes. But unlike Kill Bill the first time round, and just like Kill Bill the second time round, I didn't do that. I mean, how could I when this episode's other subject is long movies and introduces a whole new way of dealing with that problem using this simple principle, and what the very death of the cinema-going experience has got to do with it. Yes, this really is the whole bloody affair. So, here it is as one long video. The question is it better this way? I am a big fat fan of Quentin Tarantino. It's the reason I have this incredible man, actor and character looking down at me in my office, forever questioning my creative and life choices. It's why I have this signed poster, and it's why I have this script. Before the Hateful Eight leaked script controversy and Tarantino got big on secrecy, his scripts used to circulate much more haphazardly. That's how I got my hands on this. This is known in nerd circles as the 2002 draft, which is the pre-split draft. No volume 1 or 2 in sight. When this was written, the phrase didn't exist. I bought this in a little movie shop in London in the summer of that same year. Production for the movie began not long after and lasted almost 6 months because it kept stretching. And then Volume 1 premiered in Leicester Square in London, where I saw it in 2003. Why is all this relevant? Because I had a year to absorb this script before it came out. Or should I say half came out, because in that time it got cut into 2 separate movies, which means now I wasn't a guy watching a movie, I was a guy comparing a movie to a script. Was I let down by how it turned out? No, that's not what this is about, but I had feelings, lots and lots of feelings. From the moment it was announced, I was tracking this film closely, from reading the scripts to following any reports coming out of production. And then the news came that Harvey Weinstein, the producer of Kill Bill, had convinced Tarantino to make this 2 films instead of 1. And my heart sank through the floor. This is definitely not the worst thing Harvey Weinstein has done, but we can add this to the pyre. It was obviously a commercial idea on his part, cynically designed to leverage Tarantino's passion. At the time, it must have felt a win for both of them, but I always held the quiet, unuttered opinion that as much as I loved the Kill Bill films, and they really are rare earth cinema, I could never let go of the idea that, in my opinion, it would have been much more successful as one story. I believed it before it came out, I believed it after it came out, and I've believed it in all the years since. Not as a movie fan or even a Tarantino fan, but as a writer. It is one story, and any splitting of the narrative is artificial as Harvey Weinstein's smile. And then this happened, which means it was time to put my money where my mouth is. So I went and sat in a cinema for 4.5 hours, including intermission, to see if I was right. Weinstein had a few influences on this film, getting Tarantino to dial down the depiction of violence because he thought it would turn people off, and splitting the movie into 2 because he thought the length would turn people away. On that second one, he's not alone in his blind devotion to conventional wisdom, and this has reached fever pitch in recent years. There is lots and lots and lots and lots of talk about how long movies are now. Like, lots. I'm going to put something to you. There is no such thing as a long movie. And all this talk doesn't address the real problem. See, I don't think that the problem with a long movie is that it's long. I think the problem is that you're just not that into it. Why? Not because movies are longer than they used to be, but because they are harder work than they used to be. Length has almost nothing to do with anything. See, we humans are not clocks. We don't keep time, we perceive time. And that perception is elastic, wildly elastic. Time flies when you're having fun. Time slows down in an accident. Time drags when you're bored. And when facing mortal peril, your entire life can flash before your eyes in an instant. Minutes have nothing to do with it. Fun fact, humans don't sense time. Instead, we patch it together on the fly from clues about how stressed or engaged we are. We're doing this all the time. You're doing it right now. The problem is, those clues are also wildly elastic, influenced by awareness, focus, and memory, what you could call the resolution of information that your brain is tracking. When you experience novelty or threat or effort or boredom, your brain lays down denser input, which feels longer because of the amount of info. But when you're absorbed in something and experiencing it without thinking, it feels short because you're barely recording. We don't track duration until something pulls us back into our awareness of our reaction to it. When the brain loops back to ask, how much effort is this taking? Am I bored? Am I stressed? Are we there yet? Which means your perception of time only properly exists when self-monitoring exists. Without self-awareness, things happen, but nothing takes time. In other words, decrease your self-awareness and you decrease time. Increase self-awareness and you increase time. And that all comes down to where your attention is pointed. Outward attention pointed away from yourself, like a task or immersive play, a daydreaming or a story, compresses and dissolves time. Inward attention, boredom, distress, physical discomfort, stretches time. Exponentially, you could say, given your whole life can pass before you in a flash. Yet, imagine if I asked you to come to the movies with me to watch a movie that's 85 years long. Would you come? The truth is, you don't experience the length of a movie by runtime. You experience it by felt time. And felt time has nothing to do with runtime.
You think that's air you're breathing?
You think that's minutes you're feeling? It's fine to have a cultural conversation about the length of movies, but we can't do it by talking about runtime. We can only do it by talking about felt time. And felt time is a whole other thing with a whole other problem and a whole other solution. And this is where the me-it ratio comes in. Articles about movie length tend to miss the real problem because they focus on what the film is instead of what it isn't. Movies don't feel long when they have a lot of stuff, they feel long when they're work. And this, curiously, is a problem of the self, a problem of being conscious, of being alive. Most of the time, we are all too aware of how we're feeling, either physically or mentally or both. And because of our wants and needs and all the obstacles in the way of them, much of that physical and mental feeling is difficult. And when it's not difficult, if you're not doing something you're interested in, it's dull. In either of these states, you are all too aware of the self. By contrast, gaming, music, sport, meditation, play, and movies, when they're successful, take you out of and away from yourself. You essentially cease to exist. You are relieved of the burden of being a person, of being conscious, and of experiencing time. Given all the tough stuff that comes with being a person, this is what makes being transported so special. Amongst other things, immersive stories give you a break from yourself. Note, not short stories, not quick stories, immersive stories. And this is the push and pull between the me and the it. The me is you, and the it is the thing you're absorbed in. When you're absorbed in the it, you are no longer me, and when you're absorbed in the me, the it recedes and even evaporates. For our purposes, the it is the movie, and the me is the audience watching. And the difference between a movie feeling short or long, indeed being fun or hard, is in the tug-of-war between the it and the me. And that is the me-it ratio. The more the movie pulls me into it, the less the me exists. And the breezier it is, and the easier it is, and the shorter it is. The more I am pulled into me and away from it, the harder it is, and the longer it is. When we are engrossed, we're in what's called a flow state, which is sustained outward attention without self-monitoring. And that's exactly what happens when you're absorbed by a good story. It's like a light trance, which is defined less by what you're focused on and more by what drops away, namely the self. It's why we use the phrase getting lost in something. You lose all bearings. When that flow state breaks, however, awareness returns, and I call this a snap. A snap is the opposite of flow. It's the moment you stop being inside the movie and are self-monitoring again. When a film feels long, what's really happening is the audience is just re-encountering themselves. We don't experience the duration of movies in minutes, we experience them in snaps. The truth about a film you call long is that it's simply not immersive enough, and that's a metric measured not by minutes but by the me-it ratio. The me-it test is simple. Fast stories have less snap and more flow. Slow stories have more snap and less flow. And this is a line that keeps moving up and down according to how engaging it is. The solution to the long film problem is not to make them shorter or police their running time. It's simply to make them better. But how better? Pacier? Well, let's talk about pace. Pace is a bit of a dangerously vague term. You'll often hear people say a movie or story lacks pace, or needs more pace, or it drags in the middle, or it loses momentum, as if the story has some internal speedometer that can be revved up and down. But pace isn't in the movie, it's in the audience. A film can't be slow, it can only feel slow. Saying a movie has pace is like saying a meteor hurtling towards Earth has fear. A meteor doesn't have fear, it invokes it. A movie doesn't have pace, it invokes it. Pace isn't something that you can add to a film, let alone a script. The best you can do is make the audience forget themselves as much as possible. Yeah, hard. The job of a transportive storyteller is not just to entertain the audience, it's to erase them. A movie's not too long because it's slow or overloaded or has too many endings, but because it lets the audience exist again. In other words, if a film feels long, you don't have a minute problem, you have a me-it problem. Now, it's not all the movie's fault, of course. We bring a lot of the me to the experience. Some people are just more predisposed to becoming absorbed than others just by the nature of their personality. Your own wiring will affect snap and flow as well as the movie. I can't say this categorically without studies, but I'd be willing to bet that cinephiles are disproportionately biased towards a brain type that finds it easier to switch off and become absorbed. My family have had whole conversations with the side of my head that I only become aware of when they ask me if I can hear them, usually with an annoyed look. There's other stuff that cause snaps outside the movie too, physical things like how comfortable the seat is, or the room temperature, or whether you're tired or hungry or restless. All of these cause snaps the it of the story can't compete with. Mental states as well, whether you're anxious or preoccupied with a problem before the movie even starts, or are just feeling cynical or skeptical. Sometimes the genre or where you are at in your life influences the snap and flow. You might really be into spy movies and flow right into them, but snap out of gross-out comedies. You might be a person that's marginalized or part of a group that rarely gets to see themselves on screen, and when you do, you disappear into the version of yourself that you're seeing in the story. But the opposite can be true too, when it's not a world that you can relate to. Your job might be up there on the screen. You're a train driver and the movie's about a runaway train. If it's accurate, you're flowing, and if it's inaccurate, you're snapping. The bestest, most flowing it movie in the world cannot prevent external snaps. In any one film, you are regularly flowing in and snapping out. From me to it, disappearing and reappearing, marking time and losing time. And felt time is a cumulative experience. It's all the snaps added together minus the flows. So you can't stop snaps, but you can minimize them. If a story needs to move quicker, it's not the runtime that needs correcting, it's the felt time. It's not the pace, it's the snap and flow. It's not the minutes, it's the me-it. Filmmakers aren't in control of your bladder, but they are responsible for how the story makes you feel. It's partly a creative choice to make a story me-heavy or dial up the it. There are all kinds of snaps you can avoid, and there are all kinds of ways to maximize flow. They range from the cognitive to the emotional to the thematic. This is a list of examples, which I'll provide a link for down below if you want to download them for yourself. Spoiler, none of them are about making the story shorter. Okay, so a film isn't long because of runtime, it's long because it's not absorbing enough. But is that a growing trend? If films aren't getting longer, are they getting less engaging? Who is the villain of this story? I have just opened a member section called The Hub, which is a place to interact more with you one-on-one and get your feedback and votes about the kinds of videos you'd like to see next, and that features, amongst other things, a monthly Q&A where you can ask me anything about screen storytelling. So if you're interested in becoming a member of The Hub, press the join button below to learn more. Okay, let's get back to our regular programming. Watching Kill Bill, yes, this episode is still about Kill Bill, it struck me just how basic the story is. It's about a wronged assassin ticking 5 names off a kill list one by one until she reaches the big bad. I mean, apart from being told out of order, we're talking Duplo level simplicity, and I am here for it. In an age of peak TV, where series are seasons long and often written without any idea of an ending, Kill Bill was like a tall glass of cold water. My narrative throat has been so parched. You see, the problem with series is their success is measured by their staying power, how many episodes and seasons the story can be dragged out for. But this is not a problem of length, as we've already talked about. It's a problem of elaborateness and information and embroidered plotting, which is a problem of cognitive load. Think about it. How can a series possibly run for several seasons if it doesn't have a slick Byzantine plot with many twists and turns? That's the conventional wisdom in the development room. You are not getting greenlit unless you can show that this will run and run. And to do that, you have to stuff it to bursting with characters and plot. And if that's exhausting to watch, it's exhausting to make. Movies get in on this too, with one eye on a movie's franchise potential even before it's made. Then there's the lore that comes with the franchise, the rules and the history of the universe you need to know to hope to follow the story. And that's even before multiple universes. There is an old adage in storytelling, one of the greats, that says, keep your characters complicated and your stories simple. Simple? How? With 5 seasons? I'll tell you how. In case you're wondering why this show and its spin-offs are so successful, look no further than their simplicity. And of course Kill Bill, which at 4.5 hours long requires no real thinking and only that you are present, and is no lesser because of it. In fact, quite the opposite. Was I right all those years ago that it should have been one film, despite it being so long? Was it damaged by being split in 2? 1000% yes. Not only did the whole bloody affair feel way shorter than 4.5 hours, the intermission, which was 15 minutes, felt interminable. This version of Kill Bill maximized flow and minimized snaps, and even more so because they were happening within the same session, together, as one complete cohesive tale, with all its original rhythms intact and free to flourish. The ending, too, felt so much different coming as it did only a few hours after the beginning. And the scenes after the House of Blue Leaves sequence, which is where the original Volume 1 ended, took on a whole different flavour because we had just seen the House of Blue Leaves sequence. So let's not talk about the problem of long movies. Let's talk about the problem of overplotting and slickness. Stories these days are too often designed like atomic Swiss watches when they were always better as wind-up clocks. The truth is, when we all leaned into series, we all, in part, leaned into the calcification of a satisfying story. If there is a call to arms, it's this: let us simplify our stories. Yellowstone and Kill Bill also have something else in common. Their trauma is synthetic. It's extreme, but it's not real life trauma. And real trauma, of the kind that's taxing even when cathartic or enlightening, is a snap that brings you back into the me state. The most me state of all, in fact, fight or flight. So love it or loathe it, if you want to increase pace, it pays to genreify your trauma. It won't necessarily make your film better, of course. It won't make it more culturally significant. It won't make it help others out there going through similar problems, but it will make it shorter. Which brings us to the question: if a movie is snap heavy, does that make it bad? I'm going to use Christopher Nolan as an example, or more specifically, Oppenheimer. It's a well-constructed film, and it impressed me more on a second viewing, but there's a reason for that, and it relates to this. Oppenheimer is well made, but it is snaptastic. There are vast amounts of information to consume, which is necessary, but which put you into a regular me state. Here is Oppenheimer and Kitty on horseback getting to know each other, and every word out of her mouth is just her backstory, with Oppenheimer's lines only serving as prompts. And there are also lines like this. It's cute, it's clever, but it's also something real life people don't say, and these are real life people, so it's snappish. And I'm singling Oppenheimer out here, but so many series and movies do this, and I hold my hand up. I've done it. Clever writing, but too clever if it snaps. It's told in several time periods too, out of order, which is more snapping. I know what you're thinking. So is Kill Bill. So why does one flow and the other doesn't? And the answer to that is because of the ratio. Does all this snapping make Oppenheimer bad? No, a snap-heavy movie is not always a bad movie, but it is a more difficult movie. It is a quote-unquote longer movie, which means the payoff has to work harder because the audience has to work that much harder. And of course, it does depend on what you are trying to achieve. Some films are designed to push back on you, to challenge you. So you can do it, but just accept you are making a long film, no matter its length. And one of the side effects of a film interpreted as long is it is often labeled as dull. The reason I liked Oppenheimer more the second time round is precisely because of the me-it ratio, and because I'd seen it once already, and that shifted the me-it. The second time round, there was way less cognitive load as it had already been done, so there was less snaps and it flowed more. In other words, I disappeared more, and the movie got shorter and quicker and more engaging. I would put most of Nolan's films into this category. You simply can't watch them only once to get the most out of them. Is that a good or a bad thing? Well, I'll let you decide. Here's another example of a snaptastic movie. Not dialogue causing snaps this time, but something rather curious. De-aging. Martin Scorsese's movie The Irishman is an excellent film. I found it deeply affecting, being unusually not about the liberating anarchy of mobster youth, but the opposite end. It was about aging, and it examined that subject poignantly. The irony is they had to de-age the characters to do it, and every time I saw a young Robert De Niro with his uncanny valley face and older man posture, I snapped out. Cumulatively, I was snapping all the way through that movie and had to fight to find the flow. I was willing, but I had to work on it. On top of this, it was a Netflix movie on the small screen surrounded by outside distractions, which added ever more snaps. So, The Irishman is a long film, but not because it's slow or meditative or bad. Quite the opposite, and not because of its runtime at 3.5 hours. It's because of its felt time, compounded by its kit of storytelling parts, many of which are snapful. And finally, bringing it back to the subject of this video, an example of where it happens even in Kill Bill. To illustrate the point, I'll show you an instance of where Kill Bill does feel long and explain the cause of it, which has nothing to do with runtime and everything to do with felt time. Unfortunately, it's in the climax where the bride at last confronts the bill of the title to do the act of the title. We have, of course, been waiting for this confrontation since the opening frame, so it's got a lot to live up to. And it's here we enter into a signature Tarantino sequence for which he is known and celebrated. Let's call it the Landa scene, an archetype most famously illustrated by the opening sequence in *Inglourious Basterds*, starring Christoph Waltz as the chilling Nazi Hans Landa. But variations of this sequence appear all over Tarantino's movies. They tend to feature a tense, polite, hyperverbal interrogation where one character knows more than they reveal and the other character is trapped but trying to maintain composure. It's often structured around the slow revelation of a power imbalance where violence is implied long before it's delivered, and the tension comes not from action but conversational performance. And in the climax of Kill Bill, there are two of them. One while Bill makes a sandwich, the other while he makes a drink. This is the Superman Clark Kent monologue. Bill's version of the Landa scene is what I am forced to call Landa Light, feeling long and slow at 9 minutes when the opening of *Inglourious Basterds* feels like a breeze at 25 minutes. Is this the fault of the writer? Well, *Inglourious Basterds* is peak Landa scene and hard to compete with, but even still, I say it's not the writing. The issue is David Carradine. His delivery is monotone and flat. If he is feeling any emotions, you wouldn't know it, except for a superior unhurriedness that undercuts all the tension. His dialogue just sounds like words in a row, like he's reciting a list. Without judging the man, as an actor, let's say he is no Christoph Waltz or Samuel L. Jackson. But it's not all his fault. Crucially, there is something else missing. The Landa scene in Inglourious Basterds is so effective in part because of the ingredients of the overwhelming threat and the power imbalance, helped in large part by history. Just seeing the uniform puts you on edge. The problem with Kill Bill is we've just seen the bride kick, slice, and shoot her way through the best assassins in the world, including dozens of Japanese samurai. We just saw her escape from being buried in a coffin 6 feet below ground in a sequence that is anyone's waking nightmare. She is irrepressible. All this means there is no power imbalance in this climax scene, except for the other way round. Bill is the one who should be threatened, and we want to see him worried, and when he is not worried, it's disappointing. One of two things needed to happen. He either needed to bring out something in this scene so powerful and overwhelming and heretofore unseen, we are suddenly worried for B, and a gun is not going to cut it. Or we needed to have seen Bill in action earlier in a way that marks him in our minds as invincible. And interestingly enough, there was such a scene or something like it in the original script where a really interesting concept is introduced. Bill, as an assassin, allows a target to live or die based on whether they can resist starting something with him or not. And in this sequence, we see him deploy his legendary skills. I can't be sure, but I think that might have done it. If the sequence was stretched as per House of Blue Leaves, that might have given us the implied threat the climactic sequence was missing. Because it wasn't missing stakes, they are really powerfully set up by the presence of the little girl, B's daughter. So what happened in a 4.5-hour movie that otherwise flew by is that 9-minute end sequence felt long. It was snapping, and I remember it feeling long the first time round too, whereas the House of Blue Leaves sequence, which is half an hour long, left me wanting to see it all over again. Is that because one was an action sequence and one was a talking sequence, as the conventional wisdom about pace would have you believe? No. I could have watched the Landa scene or the Brett's apartment scene in Pulp Fiction 3 times over again right after I saw it too. This is not about scene type, and it's not even about pace. Pace only tells you part of the picture. It's about the me-it. In Inglourious Basterds opening, I am in it. And in Kill Bill's climax, I am in me. This doesn't mean good old-fashioned minutes. Runtime is totally irrelevant in the equation. It comes into play before the film in the sense of dread that comes with learning about a movie's length and deciding whether to put yourself through it, and after the film in the sense of exhaustion that comes with what you've just experienced and deciding whether to recommend it. But really, these are marketing problems, not storytelling problems, not actual movie problems, and not even really cultural problems, except in the sense that cinema might die because of too much dread and exhaustion. But I don't think that's more likely than it will die because of the quality of the actual cinema experience, the movie experience. Hard to sell doesn't mean hard to enjoy. Splitting Kill Bill in 2 wasn't an artistic necessity, it was a distribution and business decision. It's the same reason the violence and literally the colour of the blood was turned down, to cater for marketing, and why it's back in the extreme in this latest version, because people know what they're getting and that problem has gone away. Making better, more engrossing films isn't about making films that never snap. That's impossible. It's about caring that it happens, how often it happens, and how quickly the flow recovers. And in that, there is one major thing, the biggest hack of all, which serves as a magic wand that initiates the flow state, sustains it, and recovers it after a snap. Like many movie lovers, I have felt a creeping unease at the idea of the cinema experience dying, but it has always been hard to express why beyond because I grew up with it. I had to ask myself, is it simply because I am rigidly holding on to an old way of life that isn't so relevant anymore? Movies will surely live on. Do they need to be seen in big dark rooms with strangers? And the conclusion I've come to is unequivocally yes, but it's not because of the usual reasons you hear, like the communal experience of the movies and the power of watching something with strangers. I never really bought into that. In fact, for me, it's quite the opposite. When I'm in a flow state, it's not just the me who doesn't exist, it's them too. No, What brought me to this conclusion was my local cinema's decision to play a lot of revival films lately. It has been a revelation. Some of them are films I have never seen on the big screen and have only ever known on the small screen, and I know them well, and I am surprised every time I go to see one how much more effective it is in the cinema. I notice more stuff in the frame I've never registered before. I feel it more, and it sticks with me for longer afterwards. Dare I say it, I understand it more. This is not because I'm watching it with other people, it's because I'm forced to sit in the dark without distractions. All my senses have been turned down. The world could be ending outside and I wouldn't know. This naturally forces the it state to come to the fore and subdues the me state. At home, when I'm watching something, I can pause it any time, and I frequently do. I might have my phone or my laptop nearby if I'm not watching it on there already, and both are pinging notifications. My son traipses through the room while I'm watching, and I pause it for him, or I'll pause it to go get something to eat. And my wife will pause it mid-scene to ask a question about what we're watching. All of it is snaps. I'm not talking about attention span here. I'm talking about me versus it. The small screen skews the me-it ratio towards me. The large screen skews it towards it. I don't just mean cinemas need to survive for event films either, as is the conventional wisdom right now. I mean all kinds of movies. A comedy is better in the cinema. A coming-of-age story is better in the cinema. A neo-noir Lovecraftian mumblecore movie is better in the cinema. I got to see a little episode of a TV series I wrote in the cinema on the silver screen after it was invited to show at a horror festival. I had never seen it on anything bigger than a monitor, and seeing it in that place brought it to a whole other level even I didn't see in the edit. All because that big dark room minimized the snaps and maximized the flow. It vaporized the me and sent the it nuclear. So the community aspect of cinema, or the sentimentality, or the history, or even the art of cinema viewing is not why it shouldn't go away. The reason it shouldn't go away is because we need spaces where it's only about the story, where it's only about the it and not me. And if we don't provide them, then stories will only get longer.